Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our event today, Stumbling Stone, Writing and Publishing a Novel Based on Real Life. Our presenters and authors of the book, Stumbling Stone, are Julie Freestone and Rudi Raab. This event today is not a book reading. Reading already happened before, but a description of the process from the idea for the book to the actual publishing it. And now, without further ado, here are Julie Freestone and Rudi Raab.
Okay, so we are so pleased to be here today to share with you a little about our 25-year journey that resulted in our novel Stumbling Stone and its German sister, Der Stolperstein.
Wait a minute.
It's you.
Yes, we have some slides here, so we're going to start them. And I have a few, oops. Okay, so I have just a few comments to make before we actually get into this. As Rudi mentioned, this is about our two books. So you'll notice that from looking at the slides, how long it took us to write this book, because you can see the difference in my hair color and the amount of hair he has. So also, as Sigrid said, she's recording this. A number of people told us that they wanted to come, but they had conflicts. So it will be available on the Ashby Village website at some point so that people can listen to us later. And also, I know that some of you in the audience have your own story about how you wrote your book, and maybe during the question and answer period, if you've got additional comments to add, we'd love to hear them. So I think with those are I do have one more thing. I want to make a little pitch here, which is that Ashby Village is a nonprofit organization. And I am at some point going to give you a link if you want to make a donation to Ashby Village to support the organization or the staffing and the wonderful programs that they put on. The village would welcome your donation. So, okay.
The link, but sorry, Julie, just the link is already in the chat box. I mean, for people to.
And I'll put it out there again. Okay, so Rudi.
Stumbling Stone is largely, it's fiction. We call it fiction, but it is based on our true life story. So today we're going to tell you just a little bit about us and our totally unlikely romance.
And one more thing I want to point out. Some of you have heard us do our book reading. And in the beginning of this presentation that we're doing today, you're going to think, well, wait a minute, I already heard this. So it's true. We are going to tell you a little bit about us because it will help you understand how strange it was for us to write a book together. So hang in there. Don't leave. That's part about us is going to be pretty short.
So we started out on opposite sides. On the left side, you see the picture of Julie's great-grandfather in the shtetl, in his native habitat. And on the right side is the picture of my grandfather, who at the time of the emperor, before World War I, was a police officer in Leipzig, Germany. And there he is in his Class A uniform.
Okay, so we are the basis for our main characters, Sarah Stern and Carl Schmidt. So I'm Julie. I was born in the Bronx. I'm Jewish. And my parents, who are here on the screen, were Eastern European immigrants who came to the United States as children in the early 1900s. So when I grew up, and here I am in the Bronx, I knew that we would never go to Germany. We would never buy Volkswagens or any other German products. We would, and I believed that probably every German was a Nazi.
So I'm Rudi, and I was born 8 days after World War II ended in Europe. My father was a high-ranking Nazi. My father's boss, to whom he reported, was tried in the War Crimes Tribunal in Nuremberg. And I grew up surrounded by silence. When my father's old friends from the Nazi times visited, my mother would usher us out of the room, and we knew that we were not to ask any question about who did what during the Nazi times.
So I met Rudi in Berkeley in 1989 when I was a reporter and he was a cop. Here he is in full glory in what used to be the Berkeley Police Department's uniforms. So after I interviewed him for a story, we, unlikely as it might be, started to date. I could not believe I was going out with a cop, much less a German, and to boot, a German who looked like a Hitler Youth leader, as I imagined.
So early in our relationship, Julie did not ask me what my astrological sign was, whether I liked romantic walks on the beach at sundown, or whether I liked gourmet dinners. She came right out and asked me, so what did your father do during World War II? I told her I didn't know, which was mostly true. But as I found out, that kind of an answer is rarely stopped her from digging. And digging she does really well. To mitigate her concerns, I pointed out to her that not everyone in my family was a Nazi. My uncle, for instance, my father's brother, Gerhard, was a rebel and definitely not a Nazi.
So as our romance developed and we became a couple, people kept telling us what an amazing story we had and suggested that we should write a story or a novel or something about it. And so we actually did start this project. It started out as a spy novel. It morphed into a cop novel. And we, we were working our other jobs full time. And so the book didn't make much progress, but we did once get interviewed by Charles Osgood on KCBS radio, and an independent movie producer who heard that interview contacted us and decided he was going to try to sell the story, which he did not do.
So we had a little game that Julie and I played whenever we went on vacation. We'd write a silly story based on our adventures. Once we went to Crater Lake, and we produced a definite grade D story, which we called Lost in the Lava Tube. We fed in so the movie producer about chapter 3 when he agreed with us. It was just too damn schlocky to do anything with it.
It was pretty schlocky. So we would create many retreats over the years where we would write. So once we went to our cabin in the Mendocino National Forest where there was no electricity but a generator. Friends lent us a condo in Sonoma, a schoolhouse in Pope Valley, and a cabin in Soda Springs.
So we did a lot of research about the Nazis, my father and my uncle. The book was a novel, but we wanted to get the facts straight. We've often been asked why we made it fiction, and there are a number of reasons. One story, Julie's mother.
There she is on the left.
She died when Julie was 8 years old, but she wrote many, many letters to her sister when she and Julie's father and the family were on government assignment after the war in Germany, and the family lived there. Early drafts of our book.
There we are in Germany with the house that was issued to us by the Allied High Commission, once owned by a German, and our maid. We had a maid, which was remarkable. And that's a picture of us there in Germany. Go ahead.
So early drafts of our book quoted the letters. And I thought that was incredibly boring. And I suggested we should make her, Julie's mother, alive and have her speak for herself.
Which was really interesting. Because I really didn't remember her very much. And so bringing her alive in the book was great. And I just want to say one thing about bringing letters alive. I can't see the whole gallery because the slideshow is on the screen. But if Judy Vassos is here, she has a remarkable book called My Dearest Rosie. And they are letters that her mother-in-law wrote to her, or I think it was the other way around. Her mother-in-law's parents wrote during the Holocaust, and it's an incredible book. So not all letters are boring, but it was pretty boring to be quoting my mother's letters in a fiction book where we could bring her back to life.
So Also in the book, Carl's parents are unhappily married. In real life, they were unhappily divorced.
Well, happily divorced.
Well, depends on who talked. Carl and Sarah have no children from previous marriages, but Julie and I do. And among other things, the third part of the book is based on my Uncle Gerhard's story, but we don't really know completely what he thought, what he felt, and every little detail of what happened to him.
So a number of times over the 20 plus years, we announced to each other, at least, and sometimes to other people, the book is finished. Ta-da! And it was called The Acts of Reconciliation. So every time we thought it was finished, we would contact agents and not get any response. We did all the things people tried to do to sell a book, and nothing happened.
We didn't even get a yawn out of them.
Well, once in a while, we got a comment saying nobody's interested in Holocaust stories anymore. So just a word about how we worked together, because people often ask us, how did you write a book together? So this is a picture of us at our cabin in the Mendocino National Forest. You can see we have two computers there, a map on the wall, the generator running to charge the computer. So it was sort of like parallel play. We were working on several writing projects at a time. So one was The Acts of Reconciliation. The other was a super sugary romance novel. And the third one was a book about disaster preparedness.
So what we did is in the morning with freshly charged computers, we started writing. One of us would write, for instance, the disaster preparedness book. The other one would write on the romance novel. And then about lunchtime came up, and by that time the computers needed to be recharged. So we fired up the generator and charged the computers while I went down to the lake to go fishing, and Julie prepared lunch.
And then we got back to the Acts of Reconciliation. And then we'd read each other's stuff in between. So
then several serendipitous things happened. Julie's former newspaper editor volunteered to read the manuscript. She suggested two things: picking either Carl or Sarah to be the narrator rather than an all-knowing third person. And she thought the story needed more tension and mystery. Then I retired. And that was in 2007. 18 years from when Julie and I had met. I decided to channel my inner woman, and I had to rewrite the story from Sarah's perspective.
My perspective, right.
Okay.
So mostly then I became the editor, and eventually we finished the book. Again. We gave the book to about 50 different people we knew to read it. My book group, friends, other people. And then we got their comments back, and we turned this very room that we're sitting in right now into a command center. And you can see all of the copies laid out there. Everybody went through, wrote comments, and we had to decide. We went through page by page and made decisions about whether we agreed with the comments, whether, what we would do to incorporate them. And
well, I had to.
It was interesting.
I had to write it again. So again, we sent out query letters, etc., and nothing. We agreed it was time to give up, sort of agreed. I was sad about the decision because we put so much work in it, years of it, on and off. So we did months worth of revisions, and I had to retype it. And I'm not very good. I do two-finger typing, right? So I could see the individual characters in front of myself. And then we had the third story here, Gerhard's, and that needed to come out.
So, we went along thinking we were finished. The book was over. It wasn't going to happen. We threw away a lot of paper. And then more serendipity. We went to a 2-hour Commonwealth Club panel discussion on self-publishing, put on by these two authors, Kawasaki and Welch. And they wrote, if you are thinking of writing a book, publishing a book, you must get this one. Author, publisher, entrepreneur. It was the panel discussion was great, but the book was terrific. So when we walked out, we agreed that if we were going to go forward, self-publishing was definitely the way to go. And we got a really strong message that at least a year before publication, we ought to launch a website. But I was about to retire and I didn't want to commit to another thing. I was done. This is what I wanted to do. This is us in Arizona at spring training.
Baseball.
And you'll notice that Rudy's wearing a t-shirt saying goodbye tension, hello pension. I didn't want any more commitments. But then here's some more serendipity. I was in Book Passage, which is a very well-known independent bookstore in around here in the Bay Area in California.
Court of Madera.
And I was with a couple friends and I was leafing through the newsletter that the bookstore puts out every month. And I saw a full page ad for a program of the bookstores called Path to Publishing. And they were about to do a day-long workshop for people who wanted to publish their own books. So, okay, that looked interesting. I wasn't, this is Book Passage's Path to Publishing website at that point. I think that was in October 2015. So actually, that was before that. But so then another thing happened. I was walking along a busy street in Berkeley, and I ran into our friend Elizabeth Rosner, who is a very well-known author in her own right and an editor. And I told her about the workshop we had taken and our decision that if there's Liz. Our decision that we would, if we were going to go ahead, we would self-publish. And to our surprise, she said that if she had to do it again, she would have also self-published. And she really encouraged us to go forward. And she said we could hire her as an editor. So I came home and told this all to Rudi.
So then we made a deal. Julie said we both have to read Ape, the author, publisher, entrepreneur, and go to the workshop in Court of Madera.
Together, because he thought, okay, this is good. You go to the workshop, you read the book, and then tell me what to do. And I said, no. If we're going to do this, we got to do it together.
So
at the workshop.
At the workshop, we learned about copy editors, line editors, content editors, book designers, and interior designers. So we called Liz, and we hired her. We gave her the latest version and set a date to talk to her. We hired a friend to be our web designer, and then we hired a cousin to design our book cover. We hired a book designer to lay out the interior.
And this guy was amazing because not only did he lay it out, which we didn't even know that was an issue, but he knew how to upload it to all the different platforms that were going to do the publishing. And we probably would have quit right at that point, but he was great.
We registered our domain Acts of Reconciliation, and we agreed to publish it and give it a year and then go on with our lives. This was in about April 2015. So
okay, so a couple of side comments here, breaking away from the chronology for a second. Okay, so at Path
to Publishing, they asked us to think about what our goal was. Is it to make the New York Times bestseller list, or is it to make a lot of money? Our goal was to tell the story about reconciliation between the son of a Nazi and a Jewish woman, and to give voice to a forgotten victim of the Nazis. And fortunately, our goal was not to make money, and we achieved that.
Yeah, so just a side comment about making money.
One friend who has a publisher and
not self-published, but a regular publishing house,
and has published 4 well-received books that have been even translated into many other languages. She makes $1 for each book of hers that is sold. We cut out the middleman totally, and we make $9, okay, for a paperback. Of course, we sell fewer books.
Way fewer books.
It's a different model, and it's not about the earnings per book sold.
Okay, just another side comment. This is about the website. So remember, we said that we were encouraged to put up a website about a year before we published. And fortunately, we have a lovely friend and neighbor who knew how to do this, and he created a fantastic website using some of the elements from the book cover. And the website turned out to be, I don't really think that we knew what the value of the website was going to be. They said, okay, you need to have a presence when the book comes out. But in fact, Rudi started monitoring the traffic because we got all these groovy reports that showed how many people were using it, which pages they liked the best, and whatever. And then as time went on, it gave us a place to post all kinds of things, blogs, parts of the book that we had to cut out, but that we really liked, that were still interesting reading. We did a couple of videos, and people who were interested in having us do book events watched the videos. One woman told us she thought we were so adorable, she knew we had to come and do an event with her. It's pretty weird when you're in your 50s by that time, or 60s, to be described as adorable, but hey, it worked. So, we drove the traffic to the website through emails. And I noticed that this still works. At the bottom of my email, it says visit our website, and it's got the address of both the German and the English American website. And people click on it and make comments about it. And also, we get emails through the contact us, even now, through the contact us part of our website. So that turned out to be really an amazing thing.
Back to
So,
the editor.
well, we also drove things there through our Facebook page. So, okay, back to our editor, Liz. We hired her.
I totally.
She was going to Mexico to do some kind of a seminar, but she took the book with her, and we made a date with her to have a phone conference with her. And I told Rudi that if she said to us kindly, she's very kind, at the end of the phone conversation, that we needed to start over again, we would take the book and all the millions of copies of it into the backyard and burn it. And that was going to be the end, period. Well, she didn't do that. What she did do is she made two really compelling comments about what we could do to make the book more cohesive. And she suggested that we use the story about the uncle, who was not a Nazi, who was a rebel, as a thing that brings the couple together. And then she also suggested that, what was the other thing she suggested? I lost my place here.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Okay. So, she told us that she thought that telling his story, the uncle's story, was going to become a literary stumbling stone for him. So we had struggled about how to tell his story. At one point, his story was interleaved through the Carl and Sarah story. At one point, it was all in one block. At one point, Carl and Sarah didn't know anything about it, but the reader did. Nothing quite seemed to work until she kind of made suggestions. So, and just one thing, at the end of that phone call, she said, well, do you have a clearer idea of what to do? And I said, absolutely. And Rudi said, I have no idea. And so I wrote a 2-page summary, and then we sat down with a manuscript, and it wasn't that hard. I mean, we could see places where we could add things in that would bring Uncle more to the forefront. It was just an amazing suggestion. Okay.
So one little word about the title, Stumbling Stone. In the past decade, a German artist has come up with an idea to memorialize the victims of the Holocaust. So the Germans don't make sidewalks like we do with just plain concrete. They put little stones in there. So the artist took out some stones and put bronze plaques in there with the name and date of birth and probable date of death of the victim of the Holocaust in front of the houses where they used to live. So
okay.
Our book, this third part, is a stumbling stone for my uncle, who had been murdered by the Nazis. So it's a literary stumbling stone, and that explains the title of it. So Liz gave us back the draft with all her comments, and even though ultimately I call this a joint writing project, it was actually a team building workshop with Julie and me.
But we did have a crisis at this point. You'd think after all these years of working together, we would have worked this out, but no. So we have different ways of approaching how we write. And with Liz's comments, she would make a suggestion about a different word or putting something in. And
well, I have. Where did you point to?
Right there. I like to think.
Oh yeah. When I write or build something or have a problem, I like to think about it. That means I'm sitting on the couch and apparently I'm not doing anything. So when I figured it out, then I sit down at the computer and start banging out what I was thinking about, or go outside and build something. So,
but he walks around and he takes breaks and whatever. And I, who used to be a reporter, I don't talk about it. If I think I have an idea about what to do or say, I just sit down and I start writing it. Well, that did not work because Rudi thought that when I was typing, I had made a decision about what we were going to change, which I hadn't. I was just coming up with my own suggestion. So we had to work that out because he thought I was taking over and making all the decisions.
You were. So anyway, another crisis. We registered the domain name actsofreconciliation.com. But every time Julie had to type it, she misspelled it. So I pointed out, I never liked the title anyway. We had been using it for years, and suddenly the idea of calling it Stumbling Stone seemed to be obvious. We were only weeks away from uploading the final version to both Amazon and Ingram, who would produce a book on demand. So now, something more. A side thing. I have to get away from our script here.
This is dangerous.
Okay. In the olden days, when you self-published a book, you had to prepay for maybe 500 copies, and they would print them and then ship them to you in cartons, and then you put them in your garage and try to sell them off piece by piece. This is not like that anymore. Nowadays, it's uploaded into a big computer, which is about the size of a commercial freezer chest. And if somebody orders the book, then that big freezer chest produces that book. And that freezer chest can produce 50 different books. And so nothing is being stored. No trees are being harmed, actual trees, but it's just produced as on demand.
So the rest of this happened pretty fast. We worked with our book designer to correct what seemed to be an endless collection of errors. We sent out a press release launching the website. We got a big story in the local Jewish newspaper, which was fantastic, except for one problem. The book was not available yet. So bad timing, but whatever. And then we had a huge book launch party where we weren't even going to do anything but celebrate the fact that we actually had a product. But somebody said, you got to be kidding. You're going to sell the book, aren't you? And we sold 22 copies, which actually was probably more copies than we sold at most subsequent events. We sent out an email announcement, and we immediately got an invitation from the Kehillah congregation in Berkeley, California, inviting us to come. Here we are. This was practically, I guess, our first book reading. So overall, and Book Passage, because it's part of the Path to Publishing program, which we had joined, they had agreed to do an event. Well, they usually do events for really famous authors. So this elevated our stock because people couldn't believe that Book Passage had invited us to do an event there. So that was pretty amazing. So we probably did 24 events, and the book appeared in various libraries, including here it is at the Mechanics Exchange
Institute. Mechanics Institute.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, Mechanics Exchange is something else. Okay, and we got our first check from Amazon 2 months after the book came out for $107. We were pretty impressed with that. So anyway. So then we should note that, that's you. We found after the book after we ordered the first round of books, we had another editor, our friend Nina. And what happened? She found
about
more mistakes.
But
200 to be exact.
No big problem. What you do with the print on demand, you just upload the correction, and the very next book that is being ordered is a corrected copy. So you don't have to put the little tag in the front which says errata, and then put the corrections in there. So anyway,
and our book designer, who uploaded it multiple times, told us that the last client he had 2,000 errors after it was published the first time. So that made us feel
and then came a
better.
Very final serendipity. We met two German musicians who set up a book reading.
Stop for a second. Okay, there they are on the left, and they're actually here today.
Okay, so on the left is Rebecca Rust. She grew up here in the East Bay in Richmond, and I guess also El Cerrito. And there she is with her wonderful cello, which was built in 1791. And at one point in its life, it was owned by Prince Charles. And on the right is Friedrich Edelmann, who used to be the principal bassoonist of the Munich Philharmonic. They're married and living in the southern Palatine region in Germany, surrounded by wineries. Wonderful town. So
they were spending some time here doing events with their music. And we met them, and they were in Book Passage looking for a cookbook. When they saw all the seats that were set up, if you've been in Book Passage, they have so many events there that they keep a section set up. So Friedrich decided that this was a perfect place to do a musical thing, but it was a bookstore. So he convinced the events coordinator that we should come back, even though we had already done one event, and do an event with them. And they picked out music by German composers who were driven out of Germany by the Nazis. And the music sounded like the soundtrack for what would have been a movie based on our book. So we did this event. It was very well attended.
I was impressed. So as we were leaving and at the glass door, I was thinking of having a hamburger next door. Friedrich said to me, you know what? You should come to Germany and we'll do the same thing in Germany. And I said to him, that sounds like a good idea, but there's only one thing wrong with it. Our book is in English. So we can't go on a book tour in Germany with an English language book. And Friedrich said, it's no big deal. Germans know, they all know English, so you can do it.
We said, no, we cannot do a book tour in Germany in English. But guess what? Here's Rudi translating. It took a year, but there he is translating the book into German.
And in the e-waste recycling, I found a German keyboard, and with a lot of cheat connectors, I connected that to my laptop, and I slowly translated the thing. But big problems because I had left Germany 50 years ago. Since then, the punctuation and the spelling has changed quite a lot. So I had to learn all the new changes and had to actually buy myself a German dictionary and to get it all corrected.
And then we had 3 more editors, and they didn't agree with each other about the edits because they were different ages and they lived in different parts of Germany, and they got into arguments about what should and shouldn't be changed. But eventually the book was produced, and then Friedrich and Rebecca convinced us to do a book tour.
In Germany.
In German, which I don't speak.
Julie does not speak German, so
I didn't.
We translated parts of our dog and pony show, and then Julie learned them by heart. And
I had a coach, not Rudi, but a friend of ours who was born in Germany and who used to teach German, and she helped me and changed some words that it was clear I was never going to be able to pronounce correctly. And then people would come up to me afterwards and have conversations with me, which I was incapable of understanding because I had simply memorized the script. And I do want to point out to you that this really is me, even though it doesn't look like me. That was my pre-COVID hair.
Okay, so
So indeed, they did persuade us to do 16 events in 6 weeks. And we even had groupies who may be on this call, I don't know. But our friends Gail and Sherry decided that they would come and do part of the book tour with us. So of course we had to get them t-shirts so that they looked like they were touring with a band. And that was very cool.
Go back to the previous one.
Okay.
So Julie's pointing at the map. That geography is the only subject that she never took in high school because she moved around too much. So I obtained a map of Germany and the possible locations for our book tour, got little tags to put on there so that we wouldn't have to zigzag back and forth in Germany. And that Julie has some sort of an idea which way to do this. So,
and we had to, of course, hope that the people we were setting up the dates with would cooperate and not want a different date when we were in the north and have to go back to the south. We did do some zigzagging.
But largely this worked.
So in any case, not only did we do 16, we didn't actually end up doing all 16 events, but that's another story. But for reasons that I don't know, we decided to do a blog every day of the trip. So here we are with this car, so-called, it was more like a sardine can, and all of our belongings, including cartons of books and backpacks. And Rudi would drive and I would type on the blog. And then when we got to where we were staying, we would post it with some pictures. And then we would try to correct it according, well, fortunately we had some tech support from our friend Nick, and he worked it out so that my inability to post the pictures got better because he did a workaround. So just one thing here, we did feel like we had joined the circus, I have to say. So we have a few tips for those of you who are thinking of going down some version of this route. But we do want to just say one thing about our friend Elizabeth Rosner, who was our editor. She has a writing group, and she invited us to come to her writing group, and she told us that we were the epitome of persistence and perseverance because we hung in there for so many years and we finally produced essentially 2 books rather than 1. So now to the tips. Okay, so take pictures, even if you think you're never going to use them, and try to find a system to label and date them. We didn't have a system like that. And so putting together this slide presentation and other things has been a huge challenge because the pictures were, and still are, a mishmash. Okay, and be realistic. Rudi said that it's important to define your goals. If you think that it's realistic to make the New York Times bestseller list, okay, that's fine. But, you need a realistic goal. And maybe it's just simply to produce the book. And I know that Judy Vassos, who I mentioned before, knew that there was something in those letters of her mother-in-laws that had to be in a book. So, and then manage your expectations. We knew that we weren't going to make any money. And Rudi would ask me, how much money did we make this month? And I tried to remind him that wasn't what we were in it for. And then our friends didn't help by asking us how much money we were making. So,
or how many books we sold.
Yeah. So also get help. The Bay Area Independent Publishers Association is a great resource. And so is Left Coast Writers. And most of all, have fun. Okay, that's important. So we're just about finished here. And if you've got questions, we'll be happy to answer them. So here's our website. You could read the blogs from our German trip if you want to get, and then we started posting blogs from the pandemic there too. There are a lot of photos there are videos and other things. And if you have questions for us, please email us. We're happy to answer your questions. Rudi1Julie@AOL.com.
All right. One last word. In the original, very first edition, on the back of the book, there was a picture of Julie and me holding our teddy bears. So just imagine you have a police officer in Berkeley giving you a ticket. Think of him holding a teddy bear that he brought across the Atlantic and had all these years together. And Julie's teddy bear actually originated also in Germany, because she lived there for a few years when her father worked for the U.S. government in the occupied Germany. And that's when she got that teddy bear. We took that picture down because people always asked us, what about those bears? So we gave up. And now it has a different picture on it. And that's another one advantage of print on demand. Okay. So if you have any questions.
Okay. I just want to make one more pitch about, I just posted again the donate link. Ashby Village is a great organization, especially during the pandemic. If you want to make a donation, they would totally appreciate it. So, okay, Sigrid.
Okay, yeah, I want to say first of all, thank you so very much. I mean, for that really fun presentation, fun and interesting actually, and also for me as a German, I thought it was really, really interesting presentation. So yeah, I will unmute everybody now. I mean, in case you have questions for, let me see. Okay, so yeah, you can actually you can unmute yourself if you want to, and yeah, are there any questions?
No more questions, but it is fantastic. It was a fantastic presentation today, especially since we did the whole book tour and all those events. And most of what we heard today, we didn't know about. So this was just spectacular.
Our next concert program, we ought to do that too and tell what parts of the music that we screamed at each other over.
Yeah, we should talk about our crisis when we learn a new piece.
That was such a good idea. We just had on this.
Yeah, we had a big crisis, but the next day it worked much better than the day before.
And it was really a challenge to plan the book tour with them in Germany and us here, and us trying to coordinate all of the different people that we were trying to talk to about events and stuff. It was really interesting.
So how many of the 16 planned events did you actually do in the end?
We did 12, and then we were taking a 3-day break in Düsseldorf when I noticed that I could not see out of my left eye.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
So Rudy's nephew, who lives there, rushed us to the emergency room, and it turned out that I had a detached retina.
Oh.
And we came home.
So you have to operate that before because the retina will die if it isn't connected to anything, and then you have to lie on your stomach more or less for 3 months.
Well, no.
Okay, some people have to. They put a nitrogen bubble into your eyeball to hold the retina in place. So that would cost a lot of money hotel-wise in Germany.
Well, also, we did not want to be trapped with our cartons of books, our backpacks, in a hotel room in Germany for 8 weeks. That's how long you have to wait before you can fly. So what we did is we went home and we left Friedrich and Rebecca with our cartons of books. And they actually did a couple of the events without us.
They faked it.
Yeah, we faked it.
Yeah, it was an adventure.
So
and we sold at least 20 books every time.
We sold 20 books every time, and we advertised it. We had readers, and so it was quite successful.
We sold more books at the German events than we sold at the American events.
Right.
I have a somewhat trivial question, actually. Looking at the book cover, I mean, of the Stumbling Stone book. Who decided that Rudi was the one who was first named? I mean, who was named first? I mean, Stumbling Stone, Rudi Raab, and Julie Freestone. So
that is a very funny question, but there really was a question. He wanted to be first. And I was a reporter. I had a byline, I was a freelance reporter. So I had, 5 or 6 stories a week published. I didn't really need or care about seeing my name first. It did not matter to me. And it did matter to him. So that's how we decided. But that's a good question. And some of the decisions that we had to make were almost as random. I mean, for example, I thought somebody might ask how Rudi decided, because he said at one point that he channeled his inner woman and rewrote the book so that instead of the all-knowing third-person narrator, it was told from Sarah's point of view. He decided, and I thought it was fine, we couldn't make up our mind who should tell the story. He decided that people would be more interested in hearing the story from the Jewish woman's point of view than from the son of a Nazi. So that was, we didn't do a focus group or anything. We just made that decision.
Actually, we did focus groups. The Richmond shoreline has a wonderful path. And we used to go there at least 3 times a week for a mile and a half. And while we were gazing at the San Francisco skyline in the distance, we had our book conferences there. So,
which somebody might refer to as arguments, but they were either book conferences or arguments or whatever. But yes, we got a lot of work done walking along the shoreline.
Any other questions from anybody?
Did you enjoy the book tour in Germany? Did you have? Did you enjoy it? I mean, besides the somewhat tragic.
Seriously, it was like being in the circus.
Okay, for me, I had 4 minus. That means barely a D minus passing grade in English, and the same about in German. Here I find myself at a German university giving a talk about our book that was written in English too, because it was an American literature class. And I said to myself, I either feel like an imposter or this is totally unreal. It was something in the middle.
That was the only event that was in English. But, you bring up a good question. When we first, this is in the book, when we first went to Germany, and we asked people, what did your family do during the war? Practically people would say, this was about 1990. War? What war? Oh, we don't know anything about that. When we went on the book tour, people were amazing. They wanted to tell us their stories. Blood on their family's hands, documents that they found in the attic. They really wanted to talk about the past. It was such a different experience every place we went. And, some of it was because Friedrich and Rebecca picked out some really amazing little towns that, even though they had no Jews left in them anymore, had built, synagogue, not synagogues, but museums and stuff to remember the Jewish population that had been annihilated. So it was that part of it was an amazing experience. And the reason we ended up doing a blog every day is because honestly, every day something happened, either connected with a book group or something to do with a town that we stopped in or whatever, that it had to be written about.
So where's the next tour going to be? Is that China or Japan, or which language you want to translate it into?
Well, I don't know French, so I'll use that.
Just to get you some ideas, you shouldn't get bored now. Now you know how things go. Now you know where to talk to.
Yes, and
We should go to Israel.
Now, well, Israel would be very interested because
I don't know if they'd be interested.
well, maybe not.
so
My Yiddish is rusty.
So Sigrid, thank you so much for having us. If you want, anybody wants to share this with somebody who wants to publish a book, this has been recorded, and so it will be posted on the ashbyvillage.org website, and you can share it with your friends.
Yeah, again, many thanks to you, Julie and Rudi. Many thanks, and thank you also to everybody who stayed with us and today. And looking forward to seeing you at another Ashby Village event.
Okay.
Goodbye for today. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.